Chapter 1. The Life I Tried to Live. My name is Emma. I am 26. I live with my mother in Portland, Maine. My life looks simple, but inside me there is a pain I never learned to speak about. When I was a little girl, my father left our home. He walked out on a cold evening and never came back. My mother cried quietly for weeks, but she never told me why he left. She always said, "Emma, some wounds open again when we touch them." So I stopped asking. I pushed my questions deep inside me and pretended they did not matter. I grew older, but that empty space inside me stayed the same. I learned to live without trusting anyone. I learned to keep my heart closed because the world felt safer that way. Every morning I went to the Harborview Cafe where I worked. I made coffee. I served customers. I smiled at strangers even when I felt nothing inside. I told myself this life was enough. No friendship, no love, no expectations. I believed that if I wanted nothing, then losing nothing would hurt less. But when I walked home after work, the silence always reminded me of what was missing. I used to whisper to myself, why was I not enough for him to stay? No one heard me, not even my mother. But the ache stayed in my chest like a quiet shadow. One night, while cleaning an old drawer, I found a small note in my father's handwriting. It had only one line. "Emma, forgive me." My hands shook as I read it. My heart broke all over again. I sat on the floor and cried like the little girl I once was. My mother rushed to me, held me close, and said, "You never did anything wrong. You were just a child." She tried to comfort me, but the pain spread through my whole body. I felt abandoned again, years after he left. The next day at the cafe, I tried to work normally, but my mind was heavy. I almost dropped a cup because my hands were trembling. A little boy looked at me and said, "You look sad." His small voice cut through my heart. I tried to smile and told him I was fine, but the child shook his head and whispered, "No, you're not." I turned away because I did not want him to see the tears in my eyes. That tiny moment stayed with me the whole day, reminding me how even strangers could see the pain I tried to hide. When I went home, my mother looked at me and said, "Emma, you are carrying too much alone." I sat down and whispered, "I don't know how to stop." Tears rolled down my cheeks before I could wipe them. My mother took my hands gently and said, "One day, someone will come who will help you breathe again." I shook my head quickly. "No, Mom. People always leave. That is what they do." She looked at me with sad eyes and said softly, "Not everyone leaves. Some people stay." I wanted to believe her, but my heart had no strength left. The next morning, I told myself to stay focused at the cafe. I wiped the counter slowly and kept repeating the same words in my mind. Simple life, simple rules. No hope, no fear, no expectations. It was easier to feel nothing than to risk hurting again. But sometimes, life does not follow the rules we make for ourselves. Sometimes life changes with one single moment, and it comes without warning. I remember the bell on the cafe door. I heard it, but I did not look up at first. Then something made me raise my head. A man walked in. I had never seen him before. His face looked tired, like someone fighting his own battles in silence. His eyes were deep, quiet, and sad in a way I understood too well. He came to the counter and spoke only 2 words, "Black coffee." His voice was calm, steady, and gentle. I handed him the cup, and he gave a small nod before moving to a table near the window. He did not look around. He just sat quietly, holding the cup with both hands as if trying to warm something inside him. He drank slowly and left without saying anything else. I thought I would forget him the moment he walked out. But I didn't. I did not know why. I did not know what it meant. But something in that small moment touched a part of me that had been closed for years. Something simple. something quiet, something new. That man was the beginning of a change I never asked for, but maybe I needed. Chapter 2. The Stranger Who Stayed. After that first morning, I thought the man near the window was just another passing face. I believed he would come once and never return. But the next day, when the cafe bell rang again at the same hour, I felt something shift inside me. I looked up, and there he was. He walked to the counter with the same calm steps and said the same two words: "Black coffee." His voice was steady, but there was something in it that felt familiar, like quiet sadness speaking to quiet sadness. I handed him the cup. He nodded and walked to the same table near the window. I told myself it meant nothing, but my heart moved in a way I did not understand. He came the next day too, and the day after that. Slowly something changed inside me, even though I tried to hide it from myself. I began to notice small things about him. The way he held the cup with both hands, the way he looked down before looking up, the way he avoided crowded times. He never smiled much, but when he did, even very softly, it felt like a warm light in a dark room. I tried to ignore these thoughts. I kept telling myself, "Emma, do not feel anything. Do not open your heart again." But feelings do not ask for permission. They come like thin cracks in a closed door. One morning I asked him, "Your usual?" He looked surprised for a second, then gave a small smile and said, "Yes." That one small smile stayed with me all day. When I went home that evening, my mother noticed I looked different. She asked, "Are you okay?" I shook my head and said, "I am fine." But she kept watching me as if she saw something new in my eyes. I avoided her gaze because I did not want to admit that a stranger's presence was slowly waking something in me. The next morning, he came earlier than usual. I was behind the counter arranging cups. When I looked up and saw him sitting there already, something inside me softened. He lifted his hand a little and said, "Hi." Just one word. So simple. But to me, it felt like someone knocking softly on a locked door. I nodded because my voice felt stuck. I walked to the counter and tried to breathe normally. We did not talk much at first. But some moments do not need many words. Some moments speak by themselves. For example, one day a girl spilled juice on the floor. She looked scared because she thought someone would shout at her. Before I could say anything, he stood up, took napkins from the counter, and said to the girl gently, "It's okay. Don't worry." His voice was warm. The girl smiled. He smiled too, and for the first time I saw him not as a stranger, but as a man with a soft heart. Another day, he left a small tip and drew a tiny smiley face on the paper. I looked at it and felt something melt inside me. I laughed quietly for the first time in weeks. My manager asked, "What made you smile?" I hid the paper and said, "Nothing." But inside me, it was not nothing. It was a small reminder that life can bring light even when we are not looking for it. As days passed, I found myself waiting for him. I hated that feeling at first. I told myself, "Do not wait for anyone. People leave." But I still checked the clock before he came. I still felt a strange calmness when he walked in, and I still felt a small pain on mornings when he came late. One day, he noticed me looking at the door and asked softly, "Are you expecting someone?" I froze for a second. I wanted to say no, but the truth came out of my mouth before I could stop it. "Maybe." He looked at me with gentle eyes, but he said nothing more. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. One afternoon, he walked to the counter with his empty cup and said, "You work hard." I did not know how to reply. No one had said those words to me in a long time. I looked down and whispered, "I try." He nodded and said, "It shows." That small sentence felt like a hand on my heart, telling me I mattered. I carried his words with me the whole day. Another day, while handing him his coffee, he asked, "Do you like working here?" My throat tightened because no one had ever asked me that. I said, "It's okay." He looked at me as if he saw something behind my simple answer, but he did not push. He just said, "Sometimes okay is not enough." I felt tears in my eyes, but I hid them by turning away. How could a stranger see the truth I hid for years? Even though I tried to stop myself, I felt a small hope growing inside me. A hope I thought I buried long ago. A hope that scared me. Because hope means risk, and risk means pain. But sometimes the heart opens even when the mind says no. I kept telling myself, "Do not feel anything. This will end. He will stop coming." But every time the bell rang, my heart moved before my body did. I tried to hide it, but deep inside, I knew something was happening to me. Something I was not ready for. Something I could no longer control. This stranger, with his quiet eyes and tired smile, was becoming a part of my days. And without knowing it, he was also becoming a part of my heart. Chapter 3. The days I waited. Days passed, and I thought I was getting used to seeing him. I never said it out loud, but a soft hope had begun to grow inside me. I started believing he would come every morning. I did not want to accept it, but a part of me waited for him without even thinking. Some mornings I stood near the counter pretending to check the cups, but my heart was really watching the door. It felt strange, and it felt new, because I had never waited for anyone in many years. But when something fills an empty space, you feel it even if you don't want to. One morning, I reached the cafe early. I told myself I was only working, but deep down, I knew why I came early. I wanted to see him walk in. I wanted to hear his voice. I wanted that small moment when he looked at me and said, "Hi." I kept telling myself this was nothing. I kept saying, "Emma, do not open your heart. Do not make the same mistake." But the heart listens to truth, not fear. I stood behind the counter, and time felt slow. At his usual time, the cafe door did not open. I looked up again. Still nothing. My chest tightened. I whispered to myself, "Maybe he is late." I tried to stay calm. I served customers. I smiled. I took orders, but my eyes kept going to the door like they had a mind of their own. After a while, I forced myself to stop looking. I said in my head, "He is not coming. Do not depend on anyone." That sentence hurt more than it should have. The next day, I tried to act normal, but inside, something was uneasy. I kept hearing my own voice telling me not to care. But my heartbeat said the opposite. The bell kept ringing for other customers, but each time it rang, I felt a small shock of hope, then disappointment. At one moment, I whispered to myself, "Why does it matter this much?" And the truth scared me. It mattered because he had become a small part of my routine, a small part of my heart, without asking permission. By afternoon, I felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with work. I dropped a spoon on the counter because my hand shook. My manager looked at me and asked, "Are you feeling well?" I nodded quickly and said, "I'm fine," even though I was not fine at all. Later, while I was pouring coffee, a woman said, "You look worried." I smiled politely, but her words hit me deeply. People could see what I tried to hide. That evening, when I reached home, my mother asked, "Rough day?" I sat at the kitchen table and said softly, "I think I cared too much about something I should not care about." She looked at me with concern and asked, "Who made you feel this way?" I did not say his name. I only whispered, "No one came today." My mother touched my hand and said, "It hurts when someone you expect doesn't show up." Her voice made tears rise in my eyes, but I blinked them away. The third day hurt more than the first two. The cafe felt heavier. My heart felt slow. I tried to protect myself with old thoughts. I told myself, this is why you should not open up. This is why you keep your heart quiet. But even those old thoughts could not stop the ache. Every small sound made me turn my head. Every footstep made me hope. And every passing hour made me feel foolish. By evening, I felt a pressure in my chest that I had not felt since childhood. I sat alone after closing and held my hands together. I whispered to myself, maybe he left. Maybe he found another cafe. Maybe he changed his mind. Maybe it was nothing to him. Each sentence felt like a small cut. I looked at the empty chair near the window and felt something break inside. I said to myself, this is why people scare me. They come, they leave, and they don't even know what they take with them. On the fourth morning, I tried not to hope. I walked to the cafe slowly. I told myself to think only about work. I kept my head down, arranged the counter, and tried not to look at the door. My heart felt tired. I said in my mind, do not care. Do not wait. It is over. I was wiping the counter when the bell rang. I did not look up at first. I didn't want another small heartbreak. But then I heard a voice, a soft, familiar voice. Emma, I'm sorry. I looked up quickly. It was him. He stood at the counter with tired eyes and a gentle expression. He said, I had to go out of town. I didn't plan it. Something came up. His voice broke a little. I didn't want you to think I just vanished. My throat tightened. I did not know what to say. A single tear escaped my eye before I could stop it. I looked away, embarrassed. He stepped closer and said softly, I didn't mean to make you wait. Those words touched a place inside me I had hidden for years. I whispered, I thought you were gone. He looked at me with a deep, soft sadness and said, I'm here now. And for the first time in many years, I felt something inside me breathe again. Chapter 4. The Day I Misunderstood. After he returned and said sorry, something inside me softened in a way I did not expect. I tried not to show it, but my heart felt warm again. He came to the cafe the very next morning, and when he said, good to see you, I felt a small peace inside me. It was strange how 4 days of silence had shaken me, and one simple sentence from him could steady me again. I kept reminding myself not to trust too fast, but he made it difficult. He always spoke with honesty. He looked at me like I mattered. It scared me, but it also healed something inside me. We talked a little more each day. He told me he had gone out of town for an important family matter. His voice had guilt when he said, I should have told you. I didn't think you would wait for me. His words touched a deep place in my heart, a place I kept locked for many years. I whispered, I didn't know I would wait either. He looked at me with soft eyes that made me feel safe. For days, our connection grew in small, quiet ways. A smile, a small joke, a gentle look, a warm, good morning. These tiny moments became a part of my day, and I began to feel something I had not felt in years. Hope. But life has a way of testing fragile hearts. One Saturday morning, he walked into the cafe with a woman. I saw her hand touch his arm. I saw her smile at him. I saw him lean slightly toward her to listen. Something inside me broke without warning. My chest tightened in a way I had not felt since childhood. I tried to stay calm, but my hands shook as I carried their order. When I reached their table, he looked up and said softly, Thanks, Emma. He said nothing else. No smile, no explanation, no sign that I mattered even a little. I walked back to the counter with my heart hurting so badly it felt hard to breathe. That old painful voice inside me whispered, See, Emma, People leave. People lie. You were foolish to feel anything. I kept my back turned so no one would see the tears forming in my eyes. My manager asked, "Are you okay?" And I just nodded because I did not have the strength to speak. I felt like I was falling back into the same hole I had climbed out of with so much effort. That night, I went home and could not eat. My mother asked what was wrong, but I shook my head. I did not want to say his name. I did not even want to admit how deeply he had entered my heart. I cried quietly in my room. I kept seeing that woman beside him. I kept hearing my own voice saying, "This is why you don't trust anyone." My mother came into my room and sat beside me. She touched my hair and whispered, "Emma, your eyes are telling a story you are scared to say." I closed my eyes and whispered, "I should not have let myself care." She held my hand and said softly, "Caring is not a mistake. Caring shows you are alive." He did not come the next day, or the day after that. It felt like he had taken the small light he brought into my life and walked away with it. I tried to stop thinking about him, but every moment of silence felt heavier. I kept hearing my own words. I thought he was different. And each time I said that in my head, my eyes filled with tears. On the third day, I cried in the cafe storeroom because the pain became too much. I whispered to myself, I knew this would happen. I always know. When I came out, my eyes were red. A customer looked at me with concern and asked, "Are you going through something, honey?" I forced a smile and said, "I'm fine." But I wasn't. On the fourth day, I saw him walking toward the cafe. My heart stopped. I felt fear and anger mixed inside me. I wanted to run away but could not move. He walked to the counter slowly. His eyes looked worried. He said softly, "Emma, can we talk?" I stayed silent. He took a breath and said, "Please don't look at me like a stranger." My voice finally came out in a whisper. "You had someone with you." He blinked, confused. "Someone?" I looked down and said, "The woman. You seemed close." He suddenly understood. His face softened. His voice broke when he said, "Emma, that was my sister." I froze. He continued gently, "She came to see me for one day. I told her about this cafe. I told her about you." My eyes lifted slowly. "About me?" He nodded. "Yes. I wanted her to see the place that became important to me." My throat tightened. A small tear slipped down my cheek. He stepped a little closer and said softly, "I thought you were angry, and that scared me." I whispered, "Why?" His answer was quiet and real. "Because I didn't want to disappear from your life." Something inside me cracked open. Not with pain this time, but with relief. I had misunderstood everything. I had hurt myself with my own fears. I looked at him with a soft voice and said, "I thought you left me too." He shook his head slowly and said, "No, I came back." And for the first time, I believed him. Chapter 5. Slowly. Learning to feel. After that day, something changed between us in a quiet but strong way. The fear I carried for years did not disappear, but it began to loosen its hold on me. When he explained the truth about his sister, it felt like he had lifted a heavy stone off my heart. I realized I had punished myself for something that was never real. And he looked at me with such honesty that it became hard to hold on to my old fears. I felt ashamed for misunderstanding him, but he never made me feel small. He just said softly, "It's okay, Emma. I should have explained sooner." Those words stayed in my mind all night. No one had ever been that gentle with my mistakes. The next morning, when he came to the cafe, he smiled at me in a soft way that made me feel warm inside. I gave him his coffee, and he said, "It feels good to see you smile again." My cheeks warmed, and I whispered, I am trying. He nodded and said, "Trying is enough." His voice carried a kindness I had not felt in years. It made something open inside me, something I had closed with so much force. As days passed, we talked more. Not long conversations, but meaningful ones. One day he told me about his younger sister, Lily, and how she always tried to protect him, even though she was 3 years younger. He said quietly, "She knows I hide things when I'm hurting." I looked at him and whispered, "I know how that feels." He smiled softly and replied, "I think you do." Our words felt simple, but they carried a deep truth. Two people who had learned to hide pain were slowly learning to share it. One afternoon, a stray dog stood outside the cafe door. It looked scared. Ethan stepped outside, bent slowly, and whispered to it, "It's okay, buddy." The dog came close to him. I watched them and felt something warm fill my chest. He brought the dog inside for a moment. I knelt beside the dog and said, "Hey, little one, you're safe." The dog licked my hand. Ethan laughed gently and said, "Looks like he trusts you faster than he trusts me." I looked at him and said, "Maybe he sees my fear." Ethan replied softly, "Or maybe he sees your heart." We named the dog Maple, and for the first time in a long time, I laughed without forcing it. Another day, while taking out old boxes in the cafe storeroom, I slipped slightly. Ethan caught my arm and said, "Careful." I froze for a second. His hand was warm, and my heart felt a strange pull. I whispered, "Thank you." He let go slowly and said, "I don't want you to get hurt." His voice shook a little, and it touched me deeply. I went home thinking about that moment again and again. He also gave me a small notebook one day. He placed it on the counter and said, "I thought you might want to write your feelings." I opened the first page and saw a small note from him. "Your thoughts matter." Tears filled my eyes. No one had ever said that to me. I whispered, "Why would you give me this?" He said softly, "Because you carry too much inside you." His words broke something in me, in a good way. That night, I wrote a single sentence. "I am afraid to trust, but I want to try." Our connection grew quietly, naturally. There were moments when he talked about his fears too. Once he said, "I don't want to lose someone again." I looked at him carefully and asked, "Who did you lose?" He looked down and said, "Someone who gave up on me when I needed them." My heart hurt for him. I placed my hand on the counter and whispered, "I am not here to hurt you." He lifted his eyes slowly and said, "I know." That simple exchange felt like two broken pieces trying to fit in the right place. Sometimes, I caught him looking at me with a softness I could not explain. And sometimes, I looked at him with the same quiet wonder. We were both healing from something we never spoke fully about. And healing is not loud. Healing is not fast. Healing happens in small moments when someone listens, someone cares, someone stays. I realized I was slowly learning to feel again, slowly learning to trust, slowly learning that letting someone in does not always lead to pain. Sometimes it leads to life, and maybe it was leading me to him. Chapter 6. Breaking the Walls. The days after that felt warm in a way I had not known in years. It felt safe to talk to him. It felt safe to trust him a little. But with every new feeling, an old fear rose inside me. Sometimes, while giving him his coffee, I felt my heart beating faster than it should. And instead of feeling happy, I felt scared. One morning, he looked at me and said gently, "You seem quiet today." I forced a smile and whispered, "I'm fine." He shook his head softly and said, "Emma, you don't have to hide from me." His voice made something shake inside me because no one had spoken to me like that in a long time. As our bond grew stronger, my fear also grew stronger. I was beginning to care too much, and caring felt dangerous. One afternoon, while talking about small things, he asked me, "Do you ever let people in?" His question cut through me. I looked down and said, "I don't know how." He sighed softly and replied, "I won't push you, but I'm not here to hurt you." I felt my eyes burn with tears I didn't want to show. I whispered, "I'm trying." He nodded gently and said, "That's enough." His kindness made me want to trust him more, but my past kept pulling me back. A small misunderstanding changed everything for a few days. He came late one morning, and I asked, "Are you okay?" He looked stressed and said, "I just have a lot going on." Something in his tone made me think he was pulling away. My heart tightened, and without meaning to, I became distant too. When he tried to talk later, I answered in short lines. I felt confused, scared, and angry at myself. That evening, I cried alone because it felt like I was losing him without a real reason. I whispered to myself, "Why do I always ruin things?" The next day, he did not come. My chest felt heavy again. I told myself, maybe I made him feel unwelcome. I felt guilty and sad. It reminded me of all the people who had left in the past. My father, my old friend, a boy I once loved. It felt like the same story was happening again, and I hated myself for it. I whispered, "Please don't let this end like this." On the third day, a strong storm hit our town. The cafe roof started leaking badly. Water dripped near the counter, and I tried to fix it with a small bucket. My hands shook from stress and fear. I was alone. I felt helpless. I whispered, "I wish he was here." And just when I wiped my tears, I heard the cafe door open. It was him. He was wet from the rain, breathing hard, and looking worried. He said, "Emma, someone told me the roof was leaking. I came as fast as I could." My heart nearly stopped. I never expected him to run through a storm for me. He climbed up with tools and tried to stop the water. I stood below, looking at him with tears I could not hide. He looked down at me and said softly, "I didn't disappear. I was giving you space because you looked hurt." My lips trembled, and I whispered, "I don't want space. I just didn't know what you felt." He climbed down slowly. He stepped close to me. He looked into my eyes and said, "Emma, you matter to me. More than you realize." I felt my chest open with both fear and relief. I whispered, "I don't want to push you away." He touched my hand gently and said, "Then don't. Let me stay." In that moment, the walls I had built for years began to crack. Not because he broke them, but because he waited with patience until I opened them myself. Chapter 7. Shadows from the Past. After the night of the storm, something soft and real began to grow between us. The fear inside me did not disappear completely, but it became quieter. The way he stood there, soaked in rain, saying, "Let me stay," kept replaying in my mind. Those words felt like a warm hand on a cold heart. For the first time in years, I wanted to believe that someone would stay. I wanted to believe him. But the past has a way of returning when you least expect it. One evening, after work, I found an old voicemail on my mother's phone. It was from my father. His voice was weak. He said, "Tell Emma, I'm sorry." Hearing his voice after so many years felt like a knife turning inside me. I froze and dropped the phone. My mother came running and held my shoulders. I whispered, "Why didn't you show me this?" She looked down and said softly, "You were too young. I thought it would hurt you." My voice cracked as I said, "It hurts now." She hugged me tightly as I cried into her arms. When I reached my room, I whispered into the darkness, "Why did you leave me? Why didn't you come back?" The next morning I was quiet at the cafe. Ethan noticed immediately. He came to the counter and whispered, "Emma, something feels wrong." My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. I whispered, "I heard my father's voice yesterday." Ethan's face softened with deep concern. He stepped closer and said gently, "Do you want to talk about it?" I shook my head because my throat felt tight. He did not push me. Instead, he said, "I'm here, whenever you're ready." His voice made my tears fall harder because he was giving me something my father never did. He stayed. Later that week, another shadow from the past appeared. Ethan's ex came to the cafe. She walked straight to him and said, "We need to talk." My heart dropped. I stood behind the counter, pretending to arrange something, but I listened. Her voice was sharp. She said, "You just left without answers. You broke everything." Ethan looked uncomfortable. He said, "We ended because we hurt each other. There is nothing left to fix." She looked angry and said, "Is there someone else now?" My heart stopped for a second. Ethan's eyes moved toward me. I quickly looked away. He said softly, "Yes, but she doesn't know yet." His words sent a warm fear through my whole body. Fear because I cared, and warmth because maybe he cared too. When she left, Ethan came to me. His voice was gentle. "I don't want you to think she means anything to me now." I looked at him with shaky breath. "Why did she come?" He sighed and said, "Some people come back to reopen wounds, but I don't want to go back." My voice trembled as I whispered, "I don't want to be someone's escape." He gently touched my hand on the counter and said, "You're not my escape. You're the first real thing in my life in a long time." Those words broke me in a different way. A good way. I whispered, "I don't know how to handle this." He answered, "We will handle it together." That evening, he came to meet my mother for the first time. My mother spoke to him kindly. After he left, she looked at me with soft eyes and said, "He cares for you. I can see it." I looked down and whispered, "I'm scared." She held my hand and said, "Being scared means your heart is waking up." That night, I sat on my bed and realized something important. The past still hurt, but I was not facing it alone anymore. And maybe that was enough to start healing. Chapter 8. When my heart finally opened. After everything that happened, my heart felt different. Lighter, softer. I still feared getting hurt, but that fear did not control me anymore. It felt like the shadows were finally stepping back, and I could breathe again. Ethan and I talked more honestly after his ex left the cafe. There were no more hidden worries, no more questions that lived in silence. One evening, he looked at me and said softly, "Emma, I don't want to walk through life without you." My chest tightened because no one had ever spoken to me like that. I whispered, "I don't know how to be perfect." He shook his head gently and said, "I don't want perfect. I want you." His words stayed with me as we walked together later that week. I told him about my father's voicemail. I said, "It hurt so much. It felt like he left me twice." Ethan held my hand for the first time and whispered, "You deserved someone who stayed." I'm sorry he didn't. His voice was full of pain for my pain, and that touched me deeply. I felt something inside me open in a way I had always been scared of. I said quietly, "I don't want to live with a closed heart anymore." He squeezed my hand gently and said, "Then don't. I'm here." In that moment, I felt safe in a way I had never known. Safe to feel. Safe to hope. Safe to care. All the broken pieces inside me began to find a place, not because my past changed, but because someone held my present with kindness. I looked at him and whispered, "Thank you for coming back." He smiled in a soft way that reached his eyes and said, "I didn't just come back, Emma. I stayed." Later, When we sat quietly and talked about nothing and everything, I understood something important. Healing is not about forgetting. Healing is about holding someone's hand while the past loses its power. I realized I did not need a perfect life. I only needed someone who would not walk away when life got hard. Someone who cared. Someone who stayed. And after all the years of fear, I finally said the words my heart had been waiting to say. I'm not afraid anymore. He looked at me with tears in his eyes and whispered, "Neither am I. The end."